apartment that they're staying in. It's February 3rd, 2003. There's Candy. Hi, Candy. Sure. Is she eating?
She's actually.
Maybe you can put her in the snuggly. It's Shoshana. Hi, Booba. Hi. 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 Ina Shoshana. Hi, Shoshana. And there's the ocean. Hi.
She waved.
Shoshana.
Wave to Abba.
Hi.
Hi, Abba.
Hi, Booba. Hi, Booba. Hi, Booba. There's the background, very nice ocean.
I just told Candy I would sleep out here if we lived here. Alright, you need to take a nap, my sweetie.
Kind of cool to zoom in on the ocean.
Wow.
Way out there, bro. Okay. What training? You were in Denver for 6 months and then you were shipped out.
What, is it recording?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I went to Fitzsimmons General Hospital, and I had my medical training there intensively.
Keep talking.
I worked in the operating room as a scrub nurse, and also I worked in the hospital generally, taking care of patients. And I went to lectures every day, and I had a very good medical background. So when I came back in the Army from Denver, they sent me to my unit, the unit that I had my basic training with, and had gone from the infantry to the field artillery to the collecting company. It's the same division of soldiers. And they sent me back there, and they were at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri at that time. And then after that, very short stay in Fort Leonard Wood, and we went to Boston. I forget, just outside of Boston, where our ship was waiting for us to take us overseas. And the ship, when it left, it was a luxury liner called the Mariposa. And
sounds like fun.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a great deal of fun because we got seasick, and my friend Phil Stein, whom I met in the Army.
From Michigan?
In Michigan, yeah. I got so sick he couldn't do anything, and he had pulled, for the first night he had pulled guard duty at the, right outside the dining room. So all the smells of the food came to him, and he was sick. And I wasn't feeling well myself, but I stood on and he went ahead. We just had to get in bed. Anyway, we landed in Marseille at that time. The war was still going on in France, but the western part of France was already conquered by American troops. And we went up the Rhone River Valley from Marseille. Well, the first night, I got to tell you, first night when we landed, we marched to our bivouac area from the ship, carrying our full field pack, weighing somewhere around 45, 50 pounds. And we marched 10 miles up the side of a mountain to where we were. But at that time I was young and had enough strength to do that. But I was hungry, so hungry. We hadn't eaten all day, and we got there, and they had prepared food. What they prepared was corned beef hash, I remember that. And we were getting in line to get the corned beef hash, and whoa, the sirens went off, and the German airplanes were on top of us. So some of the men hit the ground. Instead of that, I went for the food. And I remember I went for the corned beef hash. It tasted like the best steak I'd ever eaten in my whole life, you know. And you know, when you're hungry and nothing else matters, you gotta have food. Ask Shuvi, he'll tell you. So
10 cookies.
10 cookie. Anyway, so so we spent some time there, but we spent about a week there before we headed out up the valley. And I used to go into Marseille with the trucks at night, and they'd pick us up. You know, it was sort of a, what do they call that? They let us on leave, just to get some recreation. And Marseille was the wildest city you ever saw in your life. They had the French troops from North Africa were there. They were all black troops. Some of these guys were 7 feet tall, I swear. They looked 7 feet tall. But they were loose with their guns. They'd take their guns and shoot them in the air for no reason at all. You know, and you had to be careful that you didn't get involved with these guys. But, you know, not that they meant any harm, I guess, but...
Having a good time.
They were having a good time. Anyway, about 10 days after we got there, we headed up the valley. And we went, the first stop was at Lyon. And I remember sleeping there. I got out my sleeping bag, went to sleep, tired, very tired. I got up in the morning, I couldn't see anything. And when I finally pushed aside what was blocking us, I found there was at least a foot of snow on the ground. It covered us up. But I was so tired, I just slept right through it. Anyway, we got up and headed into Lorraine, into an area close to Forbach. And before we got there, we had stopped once or twice. I remember sleeping in a farmer's barn. And I want to tell you, the Frenchmen used human manure for fertilizing their crops. The stench was so terrible. It was unbelievable. Anyway, if you're tired enough, you go to sleep. I went to sleep in the barn with the chickens and the horses.
You were alone or with your whole company?
With the whole company, you know, they were all in the area. I was with 2 other guys in this French place, a French farmer. Next morning we headed out and we went up to Forbach. Forbach is just this side of Germany. But
was it whose territory? Who was controlling it?
The Germans were controlling it at that time. But my division that I was with chased them out. But we had set up a collecting company depot. Well, I explained to you what the collecting company was. They just brought back the bodies of the injured guys. We kept them alive. We'd shoot them with morphine and to lessen their pain, or we put a tourniquet on them, whatever we could do. And then they'd proceed, the ambulances would come and proceed to a field hospital, which was a more sophisticated facility. Anyway, one night, they were still fighting to get the Germans out of the Forbach. The wounded people were coming in so quickly, we couldn't handle them all. And I worked straight through for, it was close to 24 hours. I think it was about 23 hours I worked. And then I conked out completely and went to sleep in one of the rooms where the litters were. And I slept through the whole night. The next morning I got up and I found out that they decided to make that room the morgue. Mm-hmm. And all around me were the deceased. They weren't picked up yet by the crew that picks up the dead bodies. So I looked around.
Good, they would have picked you up too.
They could have, except I would have probably woken up. But But I woke up, I saw where I was, got the hell out of there as quick as I could. I went into the main part and of our collecting company and started working again.
Mm.
And the cooks brought in some food, but you know, we lost a considerable number of men. Sometimes, in some cases, you know, I'm not comparing it to the people like on D-Day, where they lost half a division
Yeah.
just crossing the channel. But anyway, so from there there was a bridge at Remagen that was torn down. That was the only way to cross the Rhine River.
To get into Germany?
To get into Germany. We wanted to get into Germany because, you know, we wanted to push them back as far as we could. So finally, a engineering division rebuilt that bridge at Remagen, and we went down to Remagen, you know, not all together, but the whole division, piece by piece, went down, and we crossed the bridge at Remagen into Germany, went north into, and we had to find a location, and for the location for our collecting company headquarters. So we picked out the it was the owner of some big brewery or champagne actually, company, whatever it was. And we took over this whole villa, and our whole company, the company was maybe 150 men, stayed there.
Sounds like a nice accommodation.
The cellar was full of such good stuff to drink. Unbelievable.
You had 150 drunk men.
Well, we didn't get drunk because, you know, we were on duty and but we drank. And we brought up bottles of champagne. They had
See the owner.
Victrola, I remember. They had Italian music on the records. These were old time, 78 records.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the song. It was an Italian song, whatever it was. I don't remember exactly. But it was a good song. I was singing it for many years after that. And eventually we went on and on and on until we got close to where the Russians were. And then the war.
So you guys were front line for a while?
Oh yeah,
front lines?
oh yeah, front line. You got
You saw Germans and stuff? Did you encounter?
Oh yeah. In fact, I took a German prisoner.
Yeah?
You know, he came down. He was injured. I see this guy walking towards me. It's a German outfit. Whoa! Took
What
out,
do I do? That's right, gun.
Took out my gun. Whoa! Halt! You know, stop! And then, but I saw that he was shot in the head. And he came with his arms up, and I took him over to our facility, and they patched him up after a while.
It's so
Took
funny
him
to
prisoner.
patch them up. The very people that you're killing, and then you go, oh, sorry.
I mean, there's rules to war, you know, supposedly.
It's so ridiculous.
Yeah, but they're not always kept.
No.
And the question.
It's funny, the Nazis, you know, the Nazis.
Yeah. Well, the Nazis, for instance, took no prisoners in the Belgium when they tried to recoup. At the end of the war, they were almost lost, and they made one last effort. I forget the name of in Belgium. Whoever they caught, they killed them.
I met a guy the other day, though. He was a POW, and I'm not sure if he was from. I think he mentioned Belgium, but I said, I thought I recalled that he said that they treated him well, and I said, oh, so you were treated well, and he goes, no. You know, I didn't get the whole story, but I think he was. I'm not sure if it was from Belgium or not, but I thought he mentioned that.
Well, whatever, you know.
But in general, they killed
they
people,
did.
right?
Yeah. Well, at that time,
It was the end.
It was the end, and so that's what happened. Anyway, when the war was over, I was supposed to, I, together with a number of men in our division, were sent to an inner part of Germany called Mayville. Mayberg. Mayville's in Wisconsin. Mayberg, and we stayed there. And we were supposed to go from there to Japan. The war in Japan was still on, and the war in Europe had ended now.
The war in Japan was still on, but the war
In Europe had ended.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And so
Where were you, by the way, when it ended, in Germany? Do you remember where you found out?
some small town, I don't
And
know.
they just announced it was over, and
Yeah.
how was it interacting with the German residents
How
of the
did-
town? Was there
how I
any
interacted?
interaction with them? Were they scared, or?
Well, they stayed away from me, and you know, at that time I was a young man. I had some young lady I was seeing, a German lady, in one of their towns. But it was a reckless thing to do because there were a lot of young German men around that resented my
Yeah,
presence.
but they were probably in the military, Nazis.
Yeah.
or something.
Well, either that or they had been discharged
Yeah.
from whatever it was. I don't know. I didn't have enough common sense to stay away from her.
Yeah, well, you
Anyway.
made it.
I made it. So anyway, I finally, I and a number of others were sent to Antwerp. At that time, it was Antwerpen to live on the beach until our boat came to send us to America in a 2-week leave and on to Japan. Well, we went there, we lived in a pup tent on the beach, and we used to go into Antwerp every night. And Antwerp, we used to go in the restaurant, they serve us this meat, and I wondered, what kind of meat is it? It wasn't quite beef, I didn't know what it was. Anyway, subsequently I'm talking to some of the men who had been stationed in Antwerp. He says, "You don't have any beef here." He says, "You're eating horse meat.
Delicious.
And if not, it's dog meat," which
Yeah.
they also serve me. Hi, Millie. Anyway, I was with a good friend of mine called Bill Collins, who had a tavern in Milwaukee. He and I were in the same unit. And Bill and I used to go into Antwerp almost every night.
Where's Antwerp again?
Antwerp's in Belgium.
Belgium, yes.
Yeah, right on the ocean. And I remember one night where they're already weeks. They were sleeping in these tents. You know, there was food, and you know, they used to cook food out in the open, and we'd go in and eat the food, but it wasn't enough, and we were getting pretty disgusted. So he and I went in and had bought a fifth. I think at that time it was a quart. They weren't making fifths. A quart of what is that whiskey that they make out of champagne?
Shuby comes in with his
Remy Martin.
What?
Remy Martin.
Yeah, that's
Cognac.
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 Hey, sure, you're right.
You knew
Cognac.
he'd come through.
We bought a bottle of cognac, the two of us, and we drank that thing. The two of us drank it, and we're staggering on the beach, and I fell down. my buddy, Bill Collins picked me up, and we staggered to our pup tent. and fell asleep. But I don't know the next day when or how. Nobody checked on you because you know you're out there in the open with thousands of other guys. No, there's no way they're checking on you. And finally, they said to me, or they said to all of us, the war. What we didn't know is they had dropped the bomb at Hiroshima, but it wasn't public knowledge. And the Army newspaper came out and said the war in Japan is over. So we went to our officer. Hey, what's going to happen to us? So we go back to the States? He said, well, I have to wait for your reassignment. So they reassigned me to go back, to Vienna from there. Vienna.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, together with many other soldiers, went to Vienna in a 40 and 8. You know what a 40 and 8 is? 40 and 8 is the railroad boxcar of the French and European railroads. It's smaller, dingier and whatever, much smaller. They work on a smaller gauge of track also. 2 weeks to get from Antwerp to there.
Could have walked in 2 weeks.
2 weeks. In the meantime, we're eating dry food in a box. You know, they give you food.
Rations.
Rations, that's right. And, but you're plenty constipated by the time you get there. Let me tell you.
It didn't include any prunes, is what you're saying.
No prunes. So, see, so anyway, I got there, and they signed me to a barracks. The second day, the officer in charge of that whole barracks called out, Reuben, Alexander Reuben, you know, called me out. Yes, you know, I reported to the guy. What is it? The general wants to see you. The general wants to see me. I don't know. You know, you have no option. So I said, what's wrong? He said, we don't know. They asked for you. So you have to go down to Vienna General Headquarters. So I went down, I did report, and I waited for the general to ask that I come into his office. I came into his office, and you know, they give you the usual military routine, at ease, sit down, all that business. And he said, Sergeant, I was a technical sergeant at that time. He said, Sergeant, he said, we need you. What do you need me for? I didn't know. So he said, we have a property recovery section here in Vienna. It's a 4-power city. The French, the British, the Russians, and the Americans. He said, our purpose here is to retrieve and control American-owned real estate. Shuby, do you want that, Reuben? Take it and put it in the, you won't eat it.
No, I don't want it, because it's cheese and meat together.
Yeah,
Keep talking. Keep
What
talking.
cities were, why was Vienna all for, what was it?
all the major cities.
All the
in
major
Europe.
cities were?
Berlin, Vienna, and I don't know of any other. But
Yeah,
those
but the
two.
main ones that were like under Nazi, like basically wherever the Nazis were,
Yeah.
hardcore, but like Paris wasn't.
No, Paris was
It
French.
ran back to the French.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anything in Germany, like the
Germany.
German big cities. But I think only those two.
Is that kind of where the Russians and the Americans met? So.
Yeah, that's right. Where I want to tell you about that. So anyway, the reason they want me is because I'm the only one with the MSO. MSO meaning your civilian occupation. I was an attorney in all of Vienna at that time.
You were the only one?
American who was a graduate attorney, a civilian attorney.
Okay. Even though you had no knowledge, I guess you didn't even know American law, you knew like Wisconsin law or something.
But this dealt with research as to title and ownership.
Okay.
And he said, look, the captain who's in charge presently is a dentist. He said he has no idea what he's doing. And
Hey man, that's not our fault.
well, I know he's
I'm
not.
just kidding.
He's not trained. He's not
Dentist.
trained. So, so the situation is that he must be replaced. You have the training. We want you there. I said, you know, you don't say no to a general.
Yeah.
So don't overdo it and ruin it.
No.
And so so he said,
the
well,
prerequisite
however,
hotel?
what goes with it is you're entitled to a automobile, a chauffeur. Now you're not going to drive, the chauffeur drives, and we put you up in a hotel, a Vienna hotel, and you have all your meals there. Well, you know, for 6 months I lived high off the hog. On the weekends, my chauffeur would take me up to the mountains and all the scenery that I wanted to
Wow.
see, and I had a very good time.
Did you wear uniform or civilian?
No, I was in uniform.
Was there a problem with Americans there? Was there some kind of animosity from the locals?
all the locals
So Nazis.
were Nazis. There were 36 doctors of law, German doctors of law, who worked in my section and worked under me. And because of who I am, it looks pretty good. I had, cut off a piece for Lily, would you?
Lily?
A little piece, yes.
I
think
gotta
she-
put the sauce on it.
What?
Like that?
What?
Like that?
No, a little less.
Huh?
Like that. Yeah. And
How about you?
Offer it to her. No, I don't. I had the other half. It's enough for me. If she offer it to her and if she wants it, fine. If not, eat it. So anyway, the 36 doctors of law knew nothing about the camps. They knew nothing about what was happening to the Jews.
By then you knew.
Well, of course I knew.
I don't know. It wasn't. You know, it was just after the war. Not everyone knew.
I knew. Some of my friends who were soldiers and I met had gone to the camps and liberated some of these camps. I knew. And
Did you realize what was going on then? Did you really realize they were trying to kill all the Jews in Europe, or was it still like they didn't like the
I was
Jews?
finding out about it.
Yeah.
I was finding out about. I knew they had killed many, and in any case, they claimed no knowledge at all, and they weren't
course.
part of it.
No one was part of it.
Nobody's a Nazi. Nobody knows anything. Did she want it?
Just a little bit of meat.
Oh, all right. So anyway, the situation is that even the secretary worked with me. Well, you know, I had Jews in my family. You know, there was a lot of intermarriage in Vienna.
Yeah.
You know, and but they knew nothing about it. Anyway, nobody I knew, even though they were Nazis, had been in the Nazi party. We joined only because, you know, we had to at that time. That's the only answers I got. But anyway, when my time, they were sending people back to the States based upon the amount of service they had. And I had plenty of service. I had 3.5 years, and they don't want me to go because they have nobody to replace me with. So the situation is that I asked to leave, and they said, look, what we'll do is make you a civilian. You'll be in this job, and I don't know what I was getting as a sergeant at that time, but you're a civilian, and I forget the category. It was a high category, and you earn $10,000 a year. That was your pay. Well, $10,000 a year in 1946,
A lot of
beginning
money.
of 46 was a lot of money. It's equivalent to maybe, who knows, $60,000 today. So I said, well, we'll put you up. We give you a home to live in. You can get married here, you know, the whole business. So I called, I called Virginia, your Safta. We weren't married at that time. We were supposed to get married when I got back.
She meantime she's waiting 3.5 years.
Yeah. So she didn't want to come to Europe. She didn't know what she was getting into. I said, well, let me talk to my mother, see how she feels. All right, my mother goes, wow, come home. So I told the general, I have to go. They want me. And
Otherwise, we would be speaking Das German
yeah.
right now.
Oh, yeah. Well, a lot of people, those who stayed, did not have a bad life. You know?
I'm sure they were
Yeah.
successful.
But whatever. I organized a protest because I was entitled to go home, and I wanted to go home, and I organized a protest. They finally decided they want to get rid of me, and they sent me home. And I came home 3.5 years to the day that I left for the service.
So you were not home for 3.5 years?
Well, I was home during the time
He was in training.
In training,
Yeah, but how long were you in Europe for?
About 2.5.
And they didn't send anyone home then? It wasn't like today, tour of duty, 90
No,
days.
They didn't have airplanes.
No,
Flying like commercial.
Anyway,
How'd you go home, by plane or by boat?
went home by a victory boat. You know what a victory boat is?
No.
It was.
Yay.
They pieced it. They pieced it together. They pieced it together. It was a boat really to carry cargo, and not troops. And troops are much lighter than cargo. So you can imagine how we sailed up and down, but every wave.
A lot of buoyancy.
Okay.
Yeah. And anyway, by that time I got sick, but not as bad as many of the others. We landed.